Hello, benchwarmers, and welcome again to the Bench Report. You're listening to Amy and Ivan.
Hello, everyone.
This time, we're diving deep into British Sign Language Week and a really interesting a parliamentary debate that just happened in the UK.
Precisely. We've got the actual record of that debate, the Hansard record, so we're getting a front row seat to what members of parliament were talking about.
What issues they flagged up.
Exactly, and ultimately, what it all reveals about BSL in the UK today for you.
Absolutely. Our goal for you in this deep dive is to, extract the crucial insights from that discussion.
Get right to the heart of it.
We want you to finish this with a solid grasp of why BSL holds such significance, the headway that's been made in its recognition.
And the big challenges, the areas where we still face hurdles in achieving greater accessibility.
There were some genuinely eye-opening points raised, so let's get straight to it.
Let's start by unpacking a really key idea that Jen Kraft highlighted right at the beginning of the debate.
Okay, what was that?
She pointed out that for the 87,000 individuals in the UK who use BSL as their first language, it's far more than just a means of communication.
Right, it's more fundamental.
It embodies their culture, their community, and their sense of belonging. That's a powerful starting point.
It really hit home when she shared her personal connection to sign language.
Yeah.
Her daughter has Down syndrome and experiences hearing loss.
Mm-hmm.
And Jen and her husband use sign-supported English. That's where signs are used alongside spoken English, often following English word order at home.
So it's part of their family life.
Completely.
Yeah.
Something as fundamental as saying, I love you, involves sign for their family. It really underscores how essential this language is in their daily lives.
It does. And it's worth remembering that BSL isn't a recent development. Its history stretches back centuries.
Wow, centuries.
With documentation existing from the 17th century. Yet, remarkably, it wasn't officially recognized as a language until 2003.
That late.
And it took until the British Sign Language Act in 2022 for that recognition to become enshrined in law.
Gosh. We should definitely acknowledge the tireless work of Rosie Cooper, the former MP, who was a real champion for that act.
Absolutely. It was her dedication that really pushed it through.
That act really does seem like it was a watershed moment. It legally mandated the promotion and inclusion of BSL within government bodies.
And led to the establishment of the BSL Advisory Board.
That sounds vital. Making sure the lived experiences of deaf signers are central to government policy decisions.
What's particularly interesting is the tangible impact of that act. Between May 2023 and April 2024, the amount of BSL content in government communications actually doubled.
Doubled. That's significant.
And the number of government departments that hadn't produced any BSL communications at all was halved.
Okay, so progress, but
And this is key, the fact that 5 departments still have 0 BSL output underscores that legal frameworks alone aren't enough.
Right, you need consistent implementation, a real cultural shift.
Exactly. That's significant progress, but also a clear indicator that there's still, work to be done.
Absolutely. As Jen Kraft rightly pointed out, 5 government departments still had no BSL communications during that period. So while we've come a considerable distance, there's definitely more ground to cover.
Which leads us directly to the ongoing challenges, particularly in the realm of accessibility and inclusion.
Where are the sticking points?
Well, Chris Vince raised a crucial point about accessibility right within Parliament itself.
Within the House?
Yes. He emphasized the desire of BSL first language speakers not just to have access to political discourse, but to actively participate in it. Their voices need to be heard directly.
And it's heartening to hear that MPs are even making an effort to learn some basic parliamentary signs.
It shows a growing awareness, maybe, a willingness to try and bridge that communication divide.
But the debate also shone a light on a really concerning issue that Jen Kraft termed the postcode lottery of BSL support for families with deaf children.
The postcode lottery, that phrase comes up so often.
It really highlights the inconsistent provision of essential services across different regions, doesn't it? Creating significant disparities.
So a key insight here is the profound inequality in access to BSL support, depending solely on where a family happens to live.
And the statistic that nearly half of all local authorities don't provide, fund, or even commission any sign language courses for families. That's frankly shocking.
According to the National Deaf Children's Society, yes. Imagine being a parent of a deaf child and facing such a fundamental barrier.
Just wanting to communicate.
Exactly. And the current alternatives often don't meet the specific needs of these families. Jen Kraft gave a really relatable example.
What was that?
How adult community college courses, while offering a general intro to BSL, frequently focus on vocabulary that isn't immediately relevant for communicating with a young child.
Right, you don't need complex political terms first.
You need signs for basic needs and affections like milk, mummy, daddy, play, book, and biscuit. That's what parents urgently need, not necessarily broader conversational topics suited for adult learners.
It's those everyday interactions that are so absolutely crucial for a child's development and for building those early bonds.
Definitely. The debate also touched on the ongoing delay in rolling out the BSL GCSE.
The secondary school qualification,
Yeah.
that seems like a really important step towards mainstreaming BSL.
Giving it the academic recognition it deserves. What's fascinating here is that, as Ben Coleman and Jen Kraft pointed out, there are already existing BSL qualifications widely recognized by the deaf community.
So why the delay with the GCSE?
That's the source of frustration, particularly when there's such a pressing need for more confident and fluent BSL signers across the country.
And then there's the stark reality of the employment gap. Jen Kraft shared a really concerning statistic.
What was the figure?
Only 37% of BSL first language speakers are currently in work, compared to a much higher 77% of hearing people without a separate disability.
Wow, that's a massive disparity. Clearly points to significant systemic barriers.
So a key insight here is the profound systemic disadvantage faced by BSL users in the job market.
It highlights that language access isn't just about communication, it's about economic opportunity and equality.
This really underscores the pervasive barriers that BSL users continue to encounter. Accessing healthcare is another significant challenge that was brought up.
Sign Health reported that a staggering 67% of deaf people have no accessible way to contact their GP, their local doctor.
67%. That's huge. How do they manage?
Well, that's the problem. And the impact on their overall well-being is significant, with deaf people being considerably more likely to experience mental health problems.
And it's so important to remember, as was emphasized, BSL is a completely distinct language from spoken English.
With its own grammar, its own syntax.
So interpretation is absolutely necessary even for written communication, as the structure and nuances differ greatly.
Matt Vickers shared a really insightful personal anecdote about visiting NeSign.
An organization focused on deaf inclusion.
Yes, and the profound understanding he gained that written English is not a direct equivalent to BSL. This really brought to life the daily frustrations.
Like what kind of frustrations?
Navigating inaccessible public services, things like understanding council tax bills, or even changes to bin collection schedules. Simple things for most people.
But potentially huge barriers.
And the example he shared about families having to interpret complex medical diagnoses for their deaf loved ones, that was particularly heartbreaking.
Oh, absolutely. You need professional interpreters for that.
It underscored the critical need for them in such situations.
Mrs. Julie Mins echoed this crucial point, emphasizing that for over 150,000 people in the UK, BSL is their first or preferred language.
And they may face significant challenges with written English and accessing vital information presented that way.
Her experience with the electricity distribution network, initially misunderstanding the need for video relay access.
Where a remote interpreter facilitates communication.
Exactly. It really illustrated this lack of basic awareness within essential services.
And while some organizations are now starting to offer video relay services, it's far from being a universal standard.
Still patchy provision.
Very much so. The fact that vital utility providers like gas and electricity in areas like Carlisle still don't offer this essential access clearly demonstrates the significant gaps.
All of these linguistic barriers, as the debate highlighted, unfortunately lead to significant social exclusion for BSL users.
Severely impacting their opportunities and experiences in crucial areas like employment, education, healthcare.
Even the justice system. It's a pervasive issue with far-reaching consequences.
It's interesting to note that even within Parliament itself, there's a growing awareness.
You mentioned MPs learning signs.
Yes, and the introductory BSL training session that Alison Hume and Ms. Mins mentioned for MPs really brought home the visual and spatial nature of the language.
And how unintentional exclusion can easily occur if communication isn't carefully considered.
Precisely. The fact that only just over a year ago, BSL coverage for questions and statements in the Commons was introduced.
Only a year ago.
And it still leaves over 50% of parliamentary business without sign language interpretation. Well, it speaks volumes about the journey still ahead.
Karan Boone shared a really moving story from his constituent Katie.
What was her story about?
The significant lack of early BSL training and support for parents of deaf children, and her ongoing persistent fight for access to relevant courses.
That fight for early support seems critical.
And the fact that parents are sometimes advised to make a difficult choice between BSL and spoken language for their children,
That sounds incredibly counterproductive.
it's frankly baffling and completely undermines the potential for bilingualism and full communication access.
And the issue of funding for BSL courses, often falling under the Adult Skills Fund.
Creates a real barrier for working parents who can't access courses during typical working hours.
Exactly. This, combined with the postcode lottery, means many families are left without the essential support they desperately need.
It feels like a systemic failure that needs addressing urgently.
But despite these very real challenges, the debate did also highlight some important areas of progress and potential future directions.
Okay, so what were the positive signs?
Chris Vince, for instance, spoke with clear commitment about his ongoing efforts to improve BSL accessibility within his local constituency work,
Taking practical steps.
and his strong desire to see greater and more meaningful political participation for BSL users at all levels.
It's encouraging to hear that focus on local improvements, too.
Jim Shannon also highlighted some positive developments in Northern Ireland.
What's happening there?
Both British Sign Language and Irish Sign Language have official recognition, and initiatives like the Police Service of Northern Ireland's Sign Language Video Relay Service are making a tangible difference.
That sounds like a great initiative.
Matt Tremaine's account from the Watford Deaf Club really brought the ongoing everyday challenges into sharp focus, though.
What kind of issues did they raise?
Persistent problems like inconsistent visibility and quality of BSL interpreters on TV, lack of subtitles on certain channels, and even politicians' online videos.
Still basic access issues, then.
And continued difficulties accessing essential public services like the NHS, MP surgeries, emergency services.
And he mentioned a specific, quite shocking case.
Yes, a sexual assault victim being tragically denied a BSL interpreter by the police.
Yeah.
Truly appalling and underscores the urgent need for systemic change.
Gosh, that example really drives home the consequences of poor access. Amanda Hack's emphasis on early years BSL provision feels so critical after hearing that.
Absolutely crucial. As she rightly pointed out, communication barriers in those formative years can have profoundly negative and long-lasting consequences for deaf children's development.
Cognitive, social, emotional growth, all impacted.
And her specific call for parent-focused BSL lessons rather than solely qualification-based courses.
That connects back to Jen Craft's point about needing milk and mummy, not complex grammar first.
Exactly. Practical, relevant vocabulary for family communication.
Clive Jones, for the Liberal Democrats, highlighted his long history of advocating for BSL.
And he raised concerns about cuts to interpretation services for healthcare access.
Yes, significant concerns. His suggestion of a feasibility study into integrating basic BSL lessons into primary schools sounds really innovative.
A forward-thinking approach to foster inclusivity early on.
And his understandable concern about the potential scrapping of the BSL GCSE in England, given the Welsh precedent.
That's definitely something requiring close monitoring and active advocacy.
Mims Davies, for the Conservatives, acknowledged the progress made through the BSL Act and reaffirmed the government's commitment to annual reporting.
Keeping the momentum going.
The extension of BSL programming quotas to on-demand services via the Media Act 2024, even if the 5% quota is questioned, is another step.
Increasing visibility and access.
It was also interesting to hear the historical reference to BSL documentation from 1576.
Wow, that far back, highlighting its rich heritage.
But she also rightly emphasized the ongoing concern around the BSL GCSE delay in England and the need for a clear delivery plan.
And mentioned updating the previous government's Disability Action Plan.
Yes, to ensure it remains relevant and effective.
Finally, the Minister for Social Security and Disability, Sir Stephen Timms, addressed many of these points.
What was the government's response?
It was noteworthy that the Deputy Prime Minister himself holds a BSL qualification and supports BSL Week, a positive sign from the top.
That is good to hear.
His apology for the delay in the BSL version of the Green Paper on Disability and his reaffirmation of commitment to the BSL Act were important.
Assurances were needed.
He reiterated the doubling of BSL activity across government, but acknowledged the need for faster progress.
So acknowledging the but.
Yes. The announcement of upcoming BSL plans for each department and the ongoing work of the independent BSL Advisory Board are promising developments.
Focusing on areas like health and social care.
Precisely. The minister also expressed clear support for the BSL GCSE and highlighted ongoing work with Ofqual to finalize assessments.
So the GCSE is still moving forward.
Apparently so. He acknowledged funding challenges for courses in places like Cornwall, suggesting devolved adult skills funds might help locally,
Local solutions for local issues.
and confirmed OFUL has finalized assessment arrangements, with a technical consultation coming soon.
What about future tech?
He touched upon the potential of AI in breaking down barriers, while also rightly acknowledging the important ethical considerations.
That's a big area to watch.
And finally, announced an upcoming consultation on mandatory disability pay gap reporting, including a BSL version.
Ensuring accessibility there, too.
Jen Craft's concluding remarks really brought it all together. Her thanks, her call for MPs to communicate better with constituents with hearing loss,
Her intention to question utility companies.
her continued advocacy for early years, support, and universal BSL for parents. It all underscores the ongoing work needed.
And her hope for a debate in the main chamber next year with interpreters present.
That would undoubtedly be a truly significant and symbolic step forward.
So, the fundamental takeaway from this deep dive into the recent parliamentary debate is that while we've witnessed significant important progress, especially with the BSL Act,
BSL remains an absolutely vital language, key to cultural identity, community, and full inclusion for a substantial part of the UK population.
and the debate clearly highlighted that very substantial challenges persist in achieving genuine accessibility and true equality for BSL users across all crucial aspects of daily life.
Which leaves us with a thought-provoking question for you, our listeners. Given the remarkable accelerating advancements in technology and this growing awareness around inclusive communication,
What comes next?
what innovative, perhaps unexpected solutions going beyond traditional interpretation can you envision that could potentially further break down these persistent communication barriers for deaf individuals?
Thinking about education, employment, healthcare, social interaction, all of it.
It's definitely something worth pondering.
As always, check out the transcript and episode notes for more information. Find us on social media at Bench Report UK. Remember to download the Bench Report wherever you get your podcasts. Take care.
Hello there, this is Tom, the producer of The Bench Report. Listener suggestions are vital to my mission of making politics more accessible and accountable. So, if you have an issue that's really important to you, personally or professionally, and want to know what those in power are doing about it, please get in touch via email or via our socials at Bench Report UK. I'll grab another coffee and start scanning those parliamentary archives.